Hello, everyone. Welcome back to From Zero to SaaS, where we built an open source payment link platform with Next.js and Stripe Connect. Today on the show, I have Lee Robinson with me, who is a React and Next.js expert and teacher. And today we want to look at strategies for static site generation with Next.js, and specifically kind of dynamically regenerating static sites, which I'm very excited about. Lee, thanks so much for joining me on the show. How are you?
Yeah, thanks for having me. Super excited to be here. Let's dive right in. I'm pumped.
Yes, yeah, maybe actually for folks who might not be familiar with your work, do you quickly want to give them an introduction?
Yeah, absolutely. So I've been working with React for about 4 years now, which is crazy, and Next.js for 2. And I got really invested in the education side. And I published my first course on Next.js and React in January. It was called Mastering Next.js. And I just recently launched my newest course called React 2025, which is more of a full stack build an entire product course that uses Next.js as one of those pieces. And it also uses Stripe, which is pretty cool. So it's very similar to an idea of what we're trying to accomplish here is, empowering people to build SaaS products and build things from the ground up across the whole full stack and use some of these new tools that make it really easy to achieve that with a limited amount of things to do. So, yeah.
Yeah, that's amazing. It's a great domain. I mean, developing like it's 2025, like, if it's up to me, let's do that all the time.
Yeah.
I just really enjoy kind of the modern sort of full stack development experience.
It's so
Awesome.
funny. It's so funny because people looked at the website before they really read anything. They're like, is this a conference for React? Is this like, what exactly am I looking at? They're like, oh, okay. Like the name threw me off a little bit, but I like the intrigue of the name, right? Like
Mm,
it makes you wonder what exactly is this?
yeah, and it's funny, like it seems so far away. You're reading like 2025. Oh, but like it's around the corner.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Yeah, this year's been a blur anyway, so I'm sure it'll be here before we know it.
Exactly. Cool. So let's have a look at maybe if we quickly look at what we did last time. So let me spin up. Actually, I have sort of this project board here. Let me put that in the chat. Copy link. So this is a public Notion board, which I'm using to track the project. And it's public. Everyone who has a Notion account can actually comment. So if you want to do that, just keep it friendly. And so we're kind of tracking our things here. So currently, we're building this MVP. And the idea with the MVP is that we want to have this payment platform that for kind of a given Stripe merchant and their given product ID, we have a page where we can buy that product. And definitely not a novel idea, but it's nice to have a way to just take sort of a URL, put it into your like Instagram, your Twitter, what have you, and start selling stuff. But so for the MVP, we want to build this without a database, and this is why, especially kind of the static site generation and all of that is very important. We want to do it without any login and authentication, without any admin interface. And the way we can do that is by basically relying on the Stripe API and the Stripe dashboard as kind of our source of truth and our admin interface. And so if we, I put that in the chat. So if we kind of spin up our current state, so we have sort of our roots here. You can see this. This is kind of the what is it called? Dynamic pages or dynamic
Yeah, dynamic routing.
routing. Yeah. So here, if we put that in the square brackets, it basically becomes a variable, and so anything that doesn't match a specific name in the pages folder will then be mapped to kind of our dynamic paths. And so we have kind of the account thing here. So account is what we're using to connect to our Stripe account. So something went wrong. That's great. Oh, maybe I have to reload. Let me see. Interesting. Okay, maybe it was
Stale
stale.
session or something.
Yeah, that could be it. So here then we can go through and you can see, so this is kind of a Stripe hosted thing. I've set this up. I specified kind of my branding in my Stripe dashboard here. So we have, let me make that full screen. We have the settings and we can, in the Connect settings, we can set our branding very easily. I just kind of set my color scheme and my little icon here. And then you can see we're pretty customized, fairly nice, and also mobile optimized onboarding experience. So if we were to load this in, on a mobile phone, it looks great also. So that's good. And then when they step through kind of the whole onboarding flow, they get back to our page. Now I'm not going to go through the onboarding flow here, but I actually have an account that is already connected. That is my tester. Anytime I'm testing, I become German. So that's my account here. And so if I kind of were to onboard with this account, then it says, okay, we're successfully connected. And now we could go to our Stripe dashboard or we can view our products. So if we go kind of to just the account ID, then we just pull kind of the list of products. I can show you. So here, this matches pages/merchant ID, and then we have, let's close this for now. We have this index here. This is the merchant landing page. And really what this does is kind of a static page that then uses what does SWR actually stand for?
It stands for stale while revalidate, which is based on the cache control header.
Yeah, and that's kind of the hook approach is really nice here, where you can basically say, because when you first load this page, the use router is undefined, or kind of our sort of query is undefined, and so in that case we basically just pass in null, and then the data set is also null, and then we can check kind of for the return types, and once the router is spun up and we have our merchant ID. We can then make the request to our API route to kind of fetch the products for this merchant, and then really what we're just doing is kind of mapping the whole all the products, listing them out with their product name, and then linking to the merchant/product ID. And so if we go to that route, what happens now is, again, and this happens on the client side kind of at runtime, and that's what we really want to optimize today. So that's here the case. So again, it's just kind of using the router, get the merchant, get the product ID, and then fetch from our API route, fetch this specific product as well as all the prices that are nested for this product. So we could have prices with different currencies. We do have that here. Where do we see the currency? Yeah, unit amount. I think we should have, currency here, USD, and then Singapore dollar as well. But so what is happening here at the moment is that every time we load the page, and we can actually see this if we use the Stripe CLI to tail our logs. So with the Stripe CLI, we can get kind of a tail of all our logs that are happening on the account. And so if I reload the page here, you can see that there's a bunch of GET requests being made to my Stripe account to get the product details here, get the product with the ID, get the prices. And this is really what we want to optimize for, because if we have a flash sale, we don't want every page visit to actually make an API request to Stripe. And I think that's pretty much enough context for now. And now
I have a question about,
yes.
I definitely agree with the idea of moving towards the static generation and revalidating that. Is there a hard API limit or billing like charges that incur if you go over a certain threshold? Is that one of the things we're trying to prevent as well too? Or is it just in general to prevent downtime if, a million people clicked on this?
Yeah, I think it's a mix. For me, I mean, okay, full disclaimer, I work for Stripe, and so anything that reduces our AWS bill is great. But yeah, just also so the thing is, what I always preach is that any good Stripe integration should not need to make a GET request to Stripe, because technically all the information that you need, like all the customer information, kind of which payment method IDs exist for them in Stripe, should be in your database. Because from an efficiency point of view, if you have GET requests to the Stripe API in your sort of user interface load path, that is not the most efficient way of doing things. And so I think it's a combination here, because, for the MVP, I've kind of set this like, oh, I don't want any database, don't want any login, because I want to kind of incrementally build on top and kind of look at what this, what it takes to go from an MVP incrementally. And also, I've kind of learned about sort of the Next.js static site optimizations. Actually, when we first met at the Prisma Day in your workshop you did on Prisma and Next.js, that's kind of where I got the inspiration from. And so, yeah, the circle closes again.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, it's funny too, because it ties in with the Firebase Stripe extension as well, right? It syncs to Firebase so that you're not pulling that on demand. Like, it makes a lot of sense. And then there's webhooks, right? Stripe has lots of great webhooks that simplify that for you.
Exactly. Yeah. I mean, ideally you optimize your database for like the kind of the region of the world that you're in, and yeah, so like having kind of GET requests to Stripe in sort of your user experience path is not the best thing to do.
Agreed.
Cool. So yeah, what I'm looking at here is just kind of the basic features, data fetching. But even though it's called basic features, it can get really advanced, which is really cool. But I think in terms of the basics, yeah, maybe Lee, do you just want to walk us through kind of the differences here?
Yeah, so the combination of get static props and get static paths allows you to do static site generation with Next.js. So get static props basically allows you to pull information from any data source, whether that's locally, an API, a CMS, and forward that as a prop to the React component that's on your page. So when you use that in tandem with get static paths, which if we talked about dynamic routing earlier, where there's some variable, right? You're talking about some X number of products. When you use that in tandem with get static paths, you say, okay, give me all the products and then create a path or a route for each one of those individual products. Mm-hmm. So these two API hooks essentially allow us to do pretty complex static site generation inside of Next.js. And the third data fetching strategy up here is get server-side props, which is doing, on demand at runtime, doing server-side rendering. So on every request, essentially.
Yeah, and I think we're actually, so where we're going to is kind of with the fallback and the revalidation, we're actually sort of blurring the lines between these.
Yeah, absolutely. It's advanced, and it takes a little bit to fully kind of understand and grok that idea, because with get static props and get static paths, this code runs in the node context. So it's running on the server, and it's not actually shipped to your client-side bundle. So anything you run there, you can, directly connect to your database if you want, and it's not going to be included on that client side. So at first, right, you're running this at build time. But then they also have the ability, using revalidation, to, after a certain period of time, I want to update the stale data on my page. And when that happens, in the background, I want to go back to the server, fetch the newest information, and if and only if that was successful, clear out the cache and give us our new static page.
Yeah.
So what this means is you have no downtime, because if that API or database connection failed, it wouldn't update the static page in the cache.
Gotcha. Yeah, which, I mean, in our case, kind of the reason why we want to update things is because you might run out of stock. And so you deactivate the product for purchase. And then ideally at some point, we do want to show on the page that, this is now out of stock, can't be purchased. But for us, it's fine for that to take, a certain amount of time to be in sync, because in the end, if we try to make a payment on an inactive product, then the Stripe API would just error. And so we would just have a small window where it looks like the product is available, but then the API errors, and then eventually we will regenerate the page and it will show it is out of stock.
Exactly.
But yeah, maybe we can look at this demo here, kind of the static reactions demo, and that's exactly the case. So it uses the GitHub API, and by making sort of reactions here, I'm on my demo Chrome profile, so I'm not like logged in, so I can't modify this. But basically, when someone adds a reaction, we can check the code here. We have our pages.
I could even go out there and let's see if I can leave one. Yeah, I can leave one if you want to see it real time.
Yeah, let's have a look at what the revalidate. Let me see, reval. Ooh, I can't type revalidate. There. Okay, so it is set to 1 second. Is that correct?
Correct.
Okay. So if we go back to here. So memorize all the numbers. Which one are you going for?
So right, it's at 491 right now. So if I go leave a thumbs up there and you refresh the page, you're not going to see it because this was the invalidation. So now, since that second has passed, if you refresh the page, you now see 492.
Yeah. Yeah, and you kind of noticed that there was a sort of a brief loading. But now anytime I reload, it's just immediately static, kind of immediate response, which is great.
Especially with the GitHub API, right? Because it's easy to get rate limited there.
Yes, exactly. Cool. So that's exactly what we want. Great. So, but now there's also the case. So this is where it kind of gets a bit advanced. So this works perfectly with fallback true. So we have kind of the scenario because we have this the paths, but then also we want to we don't want to build everything at build time. Actually, in the beginning, we won't generate any pages at build time, but rather when the first time when a specific page, so here in this case, for example, when this specific this specific product is loaded, this is the time when we actually build the page. And so that's where kind of the fallback true comes in. So maybe we can have a look at...
Yeah, specifically for get static path. So if you think about it, like you were saying with a product, at build time, let's say you have 10 products, you're going to generate a route for each one of those paths. And your CDN knows about those. It's already generated those static files. But then you update your database, you make a new product, and somebody comes and visits a path that doesn't exist. Basically, it allows you to serve up a loading shell while you make that request on the server to fetch the new information.
Cool. So I think that's exactly what we need, right? We need the get static paths in combination with get static props. And so maybe we just start here. I had this in there. I tried it last time and then didn't get it working, so I called up Lee. And here we are.
We'll see what we can do.
So I think we just start maybe with the static props. Let's start this here. Because that's where we actually call the data. Um,
So you'll call the database in both database or API in both get static props and get static paths.
so
So,
in our case, what we're going to do is actually just return an empty array here.
oh, perfect.
That's what I was thinking, because we we can't actually anticipate like how many merchants there are, and we don't really, I mean, what we could say is like, oh, maybe we have a list of premium merchants
Mhm.
for whom we, sort of generate these at build time.
Yeah.
But I think for us now, we're just going to say, okay, at build time, we're not generating anything.
Yep.
But then the first time a specific page is loaded, we basically kick into the fallback true here, and then run the get static props as a, is that then kind of a server-side render?
Yeah, so it's not a server-side
No, it's
render. It's basically just shifting that logic to the server. So you're still
okay.
having a static output, but it is running in the server context, in the node context.
Gotcha. So actually, let me look at, I had the kind of fetch here. That's what we need.
That's an interesting thing to think about. Is it's not really like we're getting rid of server-side rendering. It's just shifting. It's just improving and evolving for different use
Gotcha.
cases, really.
Okay, cool. So what we need is, so that's kind of the fetch request. And I think what's interesting here is that we actually have to specify the specific, like the full URL, right?
Yeah. So one interesting thing here is since you're already in the node context, they actually recommend that you don't call the API route. So rather than calling the API route, you would just directly do the logic that you have inside of your API route, right? Because your API route and get static props, they're both in the node context. So it simplifies that a
Gotcha.
little bit if you just do whatever was in your API route here. So what that looks like in practice, rather than copy pasting that code in a lot of places, is typically if you still need that API route, you can abstract that to like a shared library. Otherwise, you can kind of migrate a lot of this code just directly into that.
Oh yeah, okay, that's fair. Yeah, so basically, if we look at the API route that I want to call here, what it does, is really is, here it is. So based on the merchant ID and the product ID here, so that's our sort of path, merchant and then ID. So product slash merchant slash ID. Not sure if that is fully REST, sort of, yeah,
Compliant.
compliant, but let's roll with that for now. So what we do is we then retrieve all the products from Stripe for this specific merchant. So we set the Stripe account here, and then so actually the product itself does not include the prices. So we then do another API request to Stripe to get the list of prices for this specific product, for this specific merchant, and then we kind of merge the prices into our product object. So I have kind of my interface here, kind of my local product extends the Stripe product with an optional prices array, so to speak. So I guess I could merge this into, is there a downside to like calling my API route here, and or is it just sort of, is it cleaner to like, let's just do this for now.
So in the docs, it says there probably is some downside that I'm not aware of, because in the docs it says that you should not fetch from an API route. Instead, you write your server-side code directly. I can't speak exactly what that
Okay.
issue is under the hood, but it might have something to do with just you don't need that extra network hop.
Gotcha.
So if that's the case, then it's not necessarily wrong. It's just an optimization.
Optimization. Yeah. Okay. So yeah, let's do this for now, and then we can figure out the optimization later.
Okay.
But so what we can do is basically, this is our page route, a merchant product, and then we can get those from the params here, right?
Correct.
So we can just, say params.merchant and then params.product. And so we're using TypeScript here. So this is saying kind of type any now. If we wanted to type this here, I guess we could just do that where we say params is merchant is a string, and then I think product is also a string. And so now we just have,
And is it possible for those to be null or empty, or will they always be required?
So because we're combining it with the paths, like it's actually not possible for the function to execute without them, right?
Yep.
Yeah. So I think we're good. And then we are let's call this. So let's actually maybe look at. So that's just localhost. So if we just turn this into the API call, so API slash, what did I say? Product slash, that's what I did. And so this is what we get back. It's just one product object of our specific product type here. So we can just call this product. And then we want to inject that into our props, and then we have that available here, right? That's kind of the idea.
Yes. Exactly.
Cool. So maybe set this to 5 seconds as we want to demonstrate the effect. And so if we only do this get static props here now, and we were to go back to our page, we would now get an error saying that, hey, we need the get static paths. That's actually what I ran into last time when I sort of tried to do this quickly, and I was like, okay, let's just fetch it from the client. But so that's here where the combination comes in. So let's grab the static paths. Actually get rid of this. We don't need that anymore. And so the static paths is now, if we wanted to pre-build certain pages for certain merchants, we would then pull down all the products for these merchants and build kind of our nested paths array with like the merchant nested with the products. But so we don't want any of that for now. So we just pass in, I think we can do that, right? Pass in an empty
I would think so.
Let's have a look. There we are. Okay, so nice. Now you saw that it is loading.
Now you just need to rip out the client side stuff.
Well, yeah. So, it is working. Well, it's still loading on the client. Okay.
Yeah. But it would have blown up, I feel like, if
yeah, okay. Yeah, fair enough. Okay, so now we actually don't need this anymore. That's great. Dump that. So we don't need our router because we actually don't need any of. I think we can still use the router. There's like this.
Yep.
Is fallback. Router dot is fallback. Yes. So that's what we can do, because if we're doing the fallback, we then actually have to make the API request, which could take a certain amount of time. And so then we can use this here. If fallback, let's actually, the docs, Next.js docs are so amazing. Like the amount of examples and stuff, I've really been, what did I do?
Yeah, the docs are really great.
Wait, did I just... okay, just need to prettier, make us prettier. I got it twice now. All right, there we are. So we got the router. We're checking if we're in router is fallback. And then we could do another check. We don't have an error object per se, but let's have a look. So if we, if we have, no, that's not what I wanted. So if we have an incorrect product ID, what happens then? Actually, what did I do? Okay, so we get basically an object dot error back. So what we can say here is, so either if product doesn't exist, or if we have product dot error, then we say it failed to load. We already have the loading case from above. It's interesting. Do you like, what do you think about the if style when it's like single line? Do you prefer?
I think I'm so used to seeing it multi-line that I'm just like almost numb to it at this point. I'm just so used to it. Because normally, like for when you're just getting things off the ground like this, I think sometimes single line helps, especially for documentation and just kind of quick readability. But then you're probably going to have, some kind of styling or other things in there. And I think that's probably when it breaks to a multi-line.
Yeah, that's true. I mean, it just looks so nice, so compact, you know. But so now we have this. We have, okay, if we're in the fallback case, we're loading. If something went wrong, if we don't have a product or we have an error object on our product, then we say fail to load. And otherwise, we just, send our product. And there we are. So you can now see loading product. Actually, if we, let's get this, we see our 404 in here. That was the incorrect product ID. And so now if we reload this, you see there's a request being made. So now technically, it should not reload. But the thing is, actually, we're running in development mode where the whole static optimization doesn't happen. I think that's true, right?
Yep. And that can be something that's kind of confusing, especially with the revalidation too, is because you're still basically doing server-side rendering when you're doing it locally, because it's rerunning every time. So it's only when you do a production build that you're going to see that.
Cool. So let's actually do that. So we can see here in our package.json, we have our script. So we have the def, that's what we use. So in this case, the static optimization doesn't happen. But we can build it, and then we can start the next server to actually serve what we've built. So let's actually do this. I have some aliases here because no one likes to type. So, and actually the cool thing, I think it actually outputs.
Yeah.
I love this about. That's so cool.
There's some really interesting information here. It breaks down all the different data fetching strategies that you used. So whether it was statically optimized, whether you used that static regeneration, which we are doing, whether you're doing server-side rendering, all of that is all denoted in here, as well as kind of which code was chunked out and shared across your application. And then also there's metrics for, I believe, bundle size and first load JS. And if it's green, that means that you're doing great. And you can kind of monitor this as it goes from green to yellow to red to understand the performance implications of your change.
Cool. Yeah. So if we look at the legend down here, so Lambda is the server-side renders at runtime. Static automatically renders at static HTML. Now, this still means that there, might be data fetching happening on the client side, but the initial page load, like it is a static page, super fast. So that's the empty circle, and then we have the filled-in circle, which is the automatically generated as static HTML and JSON. But that is. What's the difference here? Incremental. So if we
the difference between SSG and then incremental generation is basically if you use that revalidate flag.
But that's interesting, right? Because we're using the revalidate flag here, right?
Is it
But
saying,
it's saying it's oh, static props.
hmm,
I mean, we're using aren't we using reval? We're
does it
using.
say ISR at the end?
Let me see. So we're using revalidate right here.
Yeah.
So
Does
we're
it?
in merchant product. Let's have a look.
Hmm.
That's interesting
Because
because
the
that's
key is correct. I don't think it's. I wouldn't think that it's supposed to just be empty, because if you look at like app, it's empty, but it's not using incremental static generation. So I feel like I've seen this before, and it had the text ISR after the route, but I could be wrong.
okay. Well, maybe we got to tweet at Tim or something.
Yeah.
But okay, but yeah, it's pretty cool. You get a really nice overview here. So
Mhm.
we now got our static build, and so what we can do now is we can run our start command to serve the production optimized build. So that's what we're doing now. And so if we go back, let's clear this out. So now if we load it for the first time, it says loading, we're fetching our products and prices. But now when I reload, you see it's like super quick. And now the 5 seconds have passed. So it goes back again. But like within the 5 seconds, you can see here, I'm constantly clicking reload. No communication to Stripe happens. And so as we kind of set that revalidate seconds higher, maybe we set it to what seems like 60 minutes seems fine, right? Like a minute out of sync for our product information. Is that fine?
Yeah. I mean, I think that would
I
probably be
guess
fine.
so. And with that, we can just drastically decrease the amount of API requests that we make to Stripe. Because if you think about it, like even if there's a flash sale, like only the first person hitting the site does the API request, and everyone else in that 1 minute time window who hits the page visits what was built by that first visitor, so to speak. And so that could be a million people, doesn't matter. We don't need to make another API request. And like to look at the amount of code that we've written for that, that's just staggering, isn't it?
Yeah, it's pretty amazing.
Yeah. Cool. So so we got that done. Let's maybe actually commit that just to make sure we got it in. Yeah, we got a new cool. Okay, looks grand. And then I got my shortcuts again. What do we say? Product. So incremental static. Was it called ISC?
Incremental static generation, so ISG.
ISG. Okay, so let's say move to ISG for product detail pages. Okay, let's do that. And maybe immediately push that up so folks can have a look. So as I mentioned, this is open source. We have the task here published to GitHub repo. It's mainly done. I still need to add kind of the community health files, like the contributing code of conduct and such. I think I've added the MIT license. Yeah, so we get an MIT license here. But so we can see now we just pushed this up. So yeah, feel free to have a look at that. And I mean, that's just, yeah, it still blows my mind how like, that's what we had to do to move from like API request every time we load the page to like efficient optimization.
And the crazy thing about it too is how well this scales. So one of the demos that the Vercel team made that was really cool was doing this with Twitter as the data source, which
Oh yeah.
there's millions and millions of tweets and it handles it flawlessly. I think it's static hyphen tweets dot now dot sh maybe.
Let's see, static
Hyphen tweets dot now dot sh. Yeah, I think it's still on the old.
Ooh.
Maybe it's dot Vercel dot app now. Or it might be static tweet. Try moving the S.
Ooh,
yeah, yes, there we go.
Yeah, I mean, look at that. Like, oh, maybe we should run the lighthouse for hours. But I mean, there's not much happening yet on it, so
yeah,
wouldn't be too impressed. But so how do I do this? I just append the tweet ID, is it?
So if you click on that button, click here to get a random tweet. Like this one's already statically generated, right?
Yeah.
But if you go
maybe
back,
let's use the tweet that I, that I made that is, very likely not to be there.
Mm-hmm.
Let's use that. Not that much traction. Everyone in meetings this morning, huh? Wait, so where are we? Different, yeah. I got my different browser profiles. So here, okay, we're loading. There we are.
And now when you refresh, it's just statically generated and you're good to go.
Yeah, so everyone who's on the stream, I'm gonna post it. Go to that page. It's just instant.
Yeah.
So cool. Yeah. Nice.
I also love that in this example, they rebuilt the Twitter embed. They rebuilt it so that it was using just vanilla CSS and there's no iframe. So it's pretty awesome.
That's cool. So what happens if I can't, if I click on that, it just opens. Okay, cool. Nice. Yeah, I mean, that's pretty much what I wanted to cover today. Where do we go from here? Any other things that you can think of that we could do to this? I mean, what I'm going to do in probably the next stream on Monday is just kind of chores, sort of actually, turning the data that we have now into like a user interface. Just kind of sort of JSX. Well, I guess in the end HTML, so to speak, and then maybe next week I kind of dive into the styling. But
what are your thoughts on the approach you want to take for styling? Because I have lots of opinions.
Yeah, I'd love to hear your opinions because, CSS and I are kind of in this relationship where I steal other people's CSS and then sort of make it work. So yeah, definitely would love to hear your opinions.
Yeah, I think for me, what it comes down to is whether I want to do CSS in JS or just vanilla CSS. And I know that for myself personally, like this website is CSS in JS and it uses a component library called Chalker UI, which some people might argue is overkill, right? For like a static site. Yep.
Okay.
Probably, let's say 2 years ago, I was very much sold on the promise of CSS and JS. And I still really like it. I use it for my personal site and I use Chalker UI
styled components or?
Yeah, it's it uses styled system under the hood, which is like styled components, but it allows you to more easily adhere to a design system.
Okay.
So if you pull margin, like the MT shorthand you're seeing there, margin top, if that's that to value is actually pulling from a defined scale. And when you do that, when you have these scales already all defined, it makes it a lot easier to build UIs that just look good because a lot of those hard decisions have already been made. You're not just pulling like 15 pixels and just calling it good. So there's a lot of value in that. And I was very much sold on this 2 years ago. And I still really enjoy it. But I will say the combination of CSS modules, post CSS, and then things like Tailwind CSS, are
Mm-hmm.
really making a lot of progress and are a very attractive option, especially if you're very familiar with vanilla CSS and you
Mm.
like the concept of utility classes
Yeah.
versus learning a new framework. Also, one other thing to talk about with Tailwind that's interesting with CSS and JS, there are like like hacks or workarounds, I guess, to get true dark mode support working. Like you still have to use CSS variables more often than not.
Mm.
Um, and if you're really super performance conscious, there are ways to use CSS and JS libraries that will help you get like a zero runtime. But more often than not, if you just do vanilla CSS with CSS modules or Tailwind or whatever, you're
Mm.
probably going to get a little bit better performance. Now, depending on how serious that is for you, it may or may not matter, but it's something to consider.
Yeah, I mean, there's so many approaches now, right? I think the default, so like if you do a create next app, it's kind of CSS modules, I
Yeah,
think.
it comes built in with CSS module support.
Yeah,
And one
here.
thing I didn't realize is that it actually configures post CSS under the hood, which means that it does a lot of the nice things that you might use CSS and JS for, like appending browser like vendor suffixes or prefixes, so like dash moz for Firefox and all of those things. In the compilation process, it will do that for you. And it
Mhm.
also allows you to easily override the post CSS config if you need to, support older browsers and you want to patch like some Flexbox bugs. Like it's easy to override that stuff as well too.
Gotcha. So what's the, I mean, it looks like I'm missing an extension or something, right? This doesn't look very, do you have a recommendation for like VS Code?
For a theme,
Because the thing is like, I
yeah, I'm
mean, this
surprised
doesn't
it's
look
not.
like the CSS is,
Yeah, it's not giving you the syntax highlighting, which is
it doesn't
strange.
seem to even recognize it as a CSS file, right?
Yeah, that's very strange. You would think that based on the file, um,
Yeah, like the extension, file extension name, no?
maybe you need a refresh,
Maybe.
or maybe your
Is
theme.
this a thing?
That's definitely nice, but not necessarily
It
what
shouldn't be
would give you the
required, right?
syntax highlighting.
Telesens, yeah.
Because I
Very
think for some
strange.
VS Code themes, you explicitly define like, oh, if I want syntax highlighting for these file extensions.
VS Code settings. Do I need that in my settings?
What theme are you using?
The Night Owl, Sarah Dresner's.
Nice.
Yeah, I love it. It's just the contrast. It's optimized for sort of contrast,
Uh-huh.
and it's night. So what happens if I just do this? Does that change any? No, but it doesn't seem to be like it's grayed out.
Uh-huh.
So maybe it doesn't actually have an effect because I don't have an extension installed, I guess. But that's interesting. I mean,
Mhm. Another thing that's interesting about CSS modules that was previously a big pro of CSS and JS, at least for me, was just having things scoped to whatever component you're working on.
yeah,
So, as part of that compilation process, it would only be applied to specifically this component you're working on, and then it would, get rid of the other stuff. And CSS modules helps out with that, as well as I think there's a tool called Purge CSS that Tailwind uses, but you can probably configure it with just vanilla post CSS, and that will actually intelligently go through and remove any unused class declarations and just
that's great.
minify your
Just
file.
minify as much as possible. Yeah,
Yeah.
that's awesome. Okay. Yeah, I got to figure out what my VS Code why, but that's fine. I think we don't need to do that now. But yeah, that's been very very helpful. I guess it's still sort of probably comes down to like what is the right tool for. I mean, I've heard very good things about Tailwind CSS, so I'm sort of keen to test it out.
It also probably comes down to what your goals are. Are you looking to move as quickly as possible with as little kind of configuration as possible on the UI? Like, do you want
I
as
think so, yeah.
like as much of a drop-in solution as you can possibly get?
Yeah.
And then, so knowing that, then the second question would be, are you going to require any complex components in your UI that require like JavaScript? Like, is it mostly styling, or would you need to fall back to a component library of sorts for like a, I don't know, like a multi-select or, you know, some kind of more advanced component? Like if you go to Chakra and you scroll through the component list, like there's quite a few different things. Click on Get Started.
Oh, that's interesting. So, okay, so Chakra actually comes with the whole like React components, is it?
Yeah. So yeah, on the left, like it's just
Oh,
boom,
okay.
you get a button, or boom, you get an accordion. And like some of these things, like accordion, right? Like you can totally wire up that React state yourself and do that. But you just get it out of the box when pulling
Yeah.
this. So if you need those type of components, this can really expedite your development.
Gotcha. And then I guess you have like a global theme, and then
Yeah. And it makes it really nice if you want to override
I mean that's
it.
pretty cool.
Oh yeah, loading spinner is super nice. There's also skeleton if you want to do more complex loading states, which is pretty cool. But it gives you that out of the box.
Yeah.
Um, so
I
with
mean,
their
I do
theming,
need the loading stuff, yeah.
for sure, and this could be perfect for what you're trying to do with the loading. Because sure, like you could do CSS for this yourself, and there's some utilities in Tailwind to do animation that are similar to this. It's really just depends on how much you want to get down to the nitty gritty of figuring those things out.
Yeah. I mean, it's amazing to me just how, like, the whole open source community around these things, like, yeah, how much activity there is on it. It's just
Yeah, I think they're about to ship V1 of this that has like first class TypeScript support too, which will be huge for your project. Because for a lot of CSS and JS libraries, getting TypeScript right is a challenge. And I think there's a few that do it pretty
look at
well.
that.
Yeah, contributor.
Yeah, brilliant. Okay,
Yeah.
now I can't trust your.
Yeah, I am biased. I use it for all my stuff. But
But I mean,
recently,
your stuff looks great. So like, seems to be.
recently
Yeah.
to get more exposure, I've been using Tailwind just to have a better opinion on trade-offs.
Oh, look at that. That's yeah. I mean, that's just.
And this repo is open source too. So if you want to steal inspiration from here, you totally can.
Nice.
This is my new template for any courses or anything. I just copy paste this and
Yeah, that's amazing. I mean, yeah, I've been really impressed with your work, and I really enjoyed the workshop as well. So I was like,
thanks.
nice.
I have a soft spot for design, so I try my best to.
That's great. Yeah, I mean,
merge
that's the
those.
like I'm great at choosing colors. Like you can see it, in the onboarding. You saw it there. So like, where was it?
I like this live streaming setup too, with the whole theme and design of it. It's nice.
Yeah. My friend and colleague Chris Draganos. So he helped me. He basically gave me like skeleton sketch files because I mean, choosing colors to actually to an output of like a YouTube thumbnail is a different story. But so yeah, he hooked me up. Let's give him a shout out. What's his track? There he is. Yeah, awesome colleague, awesome friend.
Shout out to Chris.
Yeah, and he's got. Does he have his Instagram? Maybe his Instagram is. Oh yeah, here's the team. Yay! Yeah, we were testing out kind of StreamYard for. We want to do more sort of live update stuff with Stripe as well, and so yeah, StreamYard. I mean, the cool thing also, StreamYard is a Stripe user, and so it's like, of course, Love it. Like
I'm sold.
pay the money, yes, please. Any
Yeah,
SaaS software, that uses Stripe, we just gotta be fans.
I'm definitely sold. I'm going to be trying this out for sure.
Yeah, it's just amazing, kind of in terms of the scene switching, and also, I just did like this sort of overlay earlier today for us, yeah, and you can, like, the cool thing is also, if someone comments, you can just click on the comment, and then it will be overlaid. Um, so
Oh, wow,
like,
that's awesome.
yeah, right. These things where, like, for someone who is hosting themselves, like sort of a one-person show, like I'm doing here, but with guests. Um, like, if you want to do this normally, you probably need someone else to run kind of the sort of run the scenes and all of that. And so, like, if I remove the screen, now I can like switch between the scenes. We can zoom
Mhm.
in. I can easily, like, in the brand settings, add our display names again. Has like different, kind of
Wow,
styles for it that we can use. We
that's so
can
nice.
overlay our logo as well. So you could do like your React 2025 or something, depending on kind of what you're streaming. There's also like these overlays that you can kind of do. Yeah, I mean, it's just so
Crazy.
easy. It's just a click of a button.
Yeah, you sold me.
Cool. Yeah, I think with that, it's getting late for me, but yeah, I mean, I think it's amazing what we've accomplished in like less than an hour. Basically, we've been
Yeah,
mainly chatting, right? So like maybe,
yeah,
yeah, 20 minutes optimized kind of static site generation with dynamic regeneration. Yeah, thanks again, Lee. Really, really great to have you on the show and learn from you. And yeah, Chakra, I'm gonna have to look into that. So
check it out for
appreciate it,
sure.
Lee.
Yeah, I appreciate you having me on. Had a blast.
Awesome. Thanks everyone for tuning in, and see you, I think, Monday maybe or Sunday, depending where in the world you are. Cheers. Bye bye.
Bye.